Today we're stepping into something foundational. Not flashy, not complicated, but deeply powerful. We're talking about herbs, flowers, and ritual salts. These are some of the most accessible tools in witchcraft. You do not need rare ingredients or elaborate setups. Many of these are already in your kitchen, your tea cabinet, or your spice rack. Mystical greetings, and welcome to another episode of Crystals, Cauldrons, and Conversations, the podcast where we talk about all things witchy, mystical, and magical, while also tying in healing, wellness, and personal growth. I am your magical host, Kaylee, and today's episode is all about herbs, flowers, and ritual salts. Starting with our cauldron corner, the moon is in the waxing gibbous phase and in the sign of Scorpio. This is good for completing already initiated projects. It's a right time for polishing details, correcting mistakes, and strengthening your efforts in any area of your life. It's an ideal phase for creativity and manifestation of goals. A powerful phase for abundance, well-being, and good luck rituals. Scorpio is known as a mysterious sign. When the moon is in Scorpio, everything is analyzed in detail and nothing is done lightly. People may be more analytical and reflective during this time. So here is a spell or ritual, however you look at it, that you can do to increase your creativity. Some things you may want are an orange candle. This represents creativity and inspiration. Jasmine or sandalwood incense. This stimulates creativity and spiritual journey. Lemon or rosemary essential oils to anoint the candle and enhance mental clarity. A pencil and paper or pen. Fluorite or amethyst to stimulate creativity and intuition. Again, as usual, you can always substitute supplies as needed or as desired. So you want to prepare your space or your altar where you will perform this spell. Anoint your candle with the oil if using and light it. Also light your incense and let the smoke fill the room or the area. Write down your creative intentions on paper. Place the fluorite or amethyst, if using, near the paper, and you want to visualize how the energy of the mood empowers your creativity and inspiration. You want to meditate on your intentions, allowing the energy of the candle and stone or crystal to reinforce them. You can recite an affirmation if you choose to. For example, you could say, "My creativity flows with ease and I feel inspired in everything I do." Thank the goddess if used in your practice for their support, and the god if used in your practice, and for the guidance. Let the candle burn and carry the stone with you. A little tip, using birthday candles, like meant for a cake, will burn down a lot quicker if you don't have a lot of time to wait for a larger candle to burn down. All right, guys, let's get into it. So I'm sorry there was no episode last week. I had carpal tunnel surgery, so I've just been dealing with that mostly on the recovery, one-handed mostly, but we are back in action, so here we go. So you can think of this episode as like a guided walk through a living apothecary. Each plant has its own personality, its own energy, and its own way of working with intention. And as always, take what resonates with you, leave what does not, and let your practice stay personal and intuitive. So first we're going to talk about the bay leaf. We're going to start with the bay leaf. It's one of the most well-known magical herbs. Bay leaf is strongly associated with manifestation, wishes, success, protection, and clarity of intention. In modern witchcraft practice, it's often used as a focus amplifier for goals. So a simple spell method using a bay leaf would be to write a clear intention on a dried bay leaf, something specific and grounded, such as I attract stable opportunities, or my goals are supported and growing. Hold it in your hands for a moment and visualize the outcome as already unfolding. And then you can safely burn it in some kind of fireproof container, or you can tear it and release it if burning is not an option for you. The symbolism here does matter. You're sending an intention outward once it is clearly defined. Bay leaf magic is less about wishing and it's more about choosing. So now let's talk about rosemary. Rosemary is also one of the most widely used herbs in magical practice and is commonly associated with protection, cleansing, mental clarity, memory, and energetic reset. This is a foundational herb in many traditions because of its versatility. So a practical ritual use for rosemary would be to create a rosemary infusion by steeping it in hot water. Once it's cooled, it can be used as a gentle cleansing wash for doorways, mirrors, or ritual tools. And you can also burn it like incense for energetic clearing. That was something I didn't know about rosemary until I was doing my research for this episode. As I do these episodes, there's so much that I am learning, and I'm basically teaching you what I'm learning as I do all the research and stuff for this podcast. So we're basically learning together, guys. Rosemary's energetic meaning is often seen as a boundary herb. So it helps define what stays and what leaves your space. So you can really think of it, its energetic structure in that way. We're also going to talk about blessed thistle. So blessed thistle comes from folk herbal traditions and is often associated with strength, protection, purification, and resilience. It's not one of the most universally standardized witchcraft herbs. I do have some that I got in a witchcraft kit that I bought that came with a variety of herbs, but it does have a long history in herbal folklore. So uses, it's often placed in charm bags, or it's used in like cleansing rituals. It focuses on emotional strength. So if you're doing some intention work, this herb is less about removing negativity and more about reinforcing your inner steadiness. So that's blessed thistle. Now for hibiscus. Hibiscus carries some vibrant, expressive energy. It is often associated with love, especially self-love, which is awesome. It's beauty, associated with beauty, confidence, emotional openness, and attraction work. Some important things to know is that hibiscus is not only about romance. In modern practice, it's often used for self-worth and emotional expression. So it's not just love, like love with another person or a romantic relationship. It's used a lot for self-worth and self-love, which is great if you have a ritual or a spell you want to try to improve your self-worth and your self-love. Adding some hibiscus petals may be very beneficial. A simple ritual idea that you could do with hibiscus is you could actually brew hibiscus tea, and you can focus on how you want to feel emotionally and energetically, not just what you want to attract. So this helps focus more about how you want to feel, not just manifesting the things we want to attract in our life, but manifesting how we want to feel on a day-to-day basis. So this kind of shifts the work inward, where, the lasting change begins and how we want to have perspectives day to day. So then we have rose petals. Rose petals, they are one of the most universal symbols of heart energy, often very much associated with love of all forms, compassion, emotional healing, also grief support, and connection. So in ritual use, you can add rose petals to a bath or a bowl of water as a symbolic release of emotional heaviness. So if you have some emotional heaviness that you need to release, if you want to, add them to your bath water, or even if you just have a little bowl of water on your space that you use or your altar, add some rose petals to symbolize the emotional release. The deeper meaning for rose energy is not just about romance. It is emotional openness without self-abandonment. Okay? It's emotional openness without self-abandonment. It's the softness that we have while keeping our boundaries intact is another way to look at it. So we're open emotionally, we have that softness about us, but we're not abandoning our self and abandoning our boundaries that we have set for ourselves. So then there's alfalfa, and not the alfalfa from the Little Rascals, the actual herb. Alfalfa is a steady, grounding herb. It's often associated with prosperity, financial stability, gradual abundance, and protection from scarcity energy. So I use alfalfa when I do abundance spells. Most of the time, I usually always toss in a little alfalfa within my spell. An important nuance, for alfalfa is that this is not like an instant wealth energy. It's more of a slow building support. There are other herbs and things that are more of commonly used for attracting abundance and things a little quicker. Alfalfa is more of a slow building one. So a ritual idea that you could do with alfalfa is you could place a small amount near your workspace or even in a money charm with intention focused on stability and consistent growth. I have a little money jar, a spell jar that I made. And like I said, when I do any kind of abundance spells, I always add a little bit of alfalfa as well. So then we have hyssop, if I said that right. Hyssop comes from purification traditions in herbal lore. So it's associated with cleansing, spiritual reset, emotional release, and energetic purification. So in ritual use, it's often used in baths or cleansing washes when someone feels energetically heavy or overwhelmed. I found that also really interesting when doing research and learning about the different herbs, because most of the herbs, if not all of the herbs, I believe listed that I'm going over, I actually do have. Hyssop is one that I actually haven't used yet, and I'm somebody who can get easily overwhelmed and sometimes feel very emotionally heavy, so it was interesting for me to learn that I could use this to help kind of release that, and I think that's something I would definitely try. So like I said, hyssop is about releasing what has been carried for too long, emotionally or spiritually. So if you've been carrying something around for a long time, something that desperately needs to be released, whether it's emotionally or spiritually, hyssop is a good one to use to aid with that. So now we're moving on to St. John's wort. This one you've probably heard of. I feel like a lot of people have heard of this one. St. John's wort is traditionally associated with joy, light, emotional uplift, and protection in folklore traditions. This herb is strongly rooted in folk medicine and seasonal traditions tied to sunlight and warmth. You may have also heard that it's good for, if you're talking more, medically or physically, it's good for pain management. And I've also heard that it's good for stress release. Of course, I'm not a doctor, and you always have to check with your doctor on these things, but I've just heard that that one's actually pretty good for that because they do make it in capsules. My girlfriend actually takes St. John's wort every day. So its magical interpretation, it's often used symbolically to bring emotional brightness during darker emotional periods. Think of it as like an inner sunlight symbolism, St. John's wort. So then you have mugwort, which I have also used in spells. Mugwort is often one of the most mystical herbs in modern witchcraft. I used mugwort, I believe, in my little spell jar. So I got these little mini spell jars, and I made a protection jar that I sealed up with white candle wax, and I definitely tossed in some mugwort. It's often associated with dreams, intuition, divination. It's used a lot in divination, subconscious awareness, and also astral exploration. So in ritual use, it's commonly placed under pillows or used in dream work type things. If you've ever done dream work, I think I've never really done too much with dream work yet. Besides kind of looking up what some of my dreams may mean. There are certain things I know about dreams, but I think doing an episode on dream work would actually be pretty cool. But I did also read that in a protection jar, mugwort was a good one to toss in, so I tossed it into my little protection spell jar. So an important safety note when it comes to mugwort, it should be used mindfully and avoided during pregnancy, they say. It is energetically strong and not meant for daily heavy use. Again, I'm not a doctor, but it's been said to avoid it during pregnancy. So just be mindful of that. Just like when working with all herbs, depending on how you're using them, if you're consuming them in any way, like making teas and stuff with them, just be mindful. They can have interactions, whether you might be pregnant or on certain medications. Herbs can sometimes interact with those things. So you just have to be mindful. Mugwort's energetic meaning is really just about opening perception, not escaping reality. So it's just opening up your mind a little bit to different perceptions. That's really interesting. I would definitely want to learn some more about dream work and like using mugwort in that practice. That's pretty cool. So one I'm going to guess that we've probably all heard of is sage. Sage is very widely used in witchcraft. It's widely used for cleansing, clearing stagnant energy, resetting spaces before rituals. I use sage to cleanse my altar before any ritual I do or any spell. Somebody actually told me recently that in the Catholic religion, they use sage during blessings, I think she said it was, which I found not to be really interesting too. I didn't know any other religions or things like that used sage in that way. So I thought that was pretty interesting when I was told that. So an important cultural note when it comes to sage is many practitioners now prefer the term smoke cleansing. Unless you're referring to specific indigenous traditions, it's more of a respectful thing. So we do call it a smoke cleanse when we use sage. And sage works best when paired with intentions. So instead of only just clearing away energy, you could say something along the lines of, I release what no longer serves me and I welcome clarity. So you can kind of say an intention when you're using sage to do a smoke cleanse. It just helps and it works best when paired with an intention. So then we have black witch salt. I also put some black witch salt in my spell jar, the little protection spell jar that I made, because black witch salt, it's a modern magical blend and it is often used for protection, also banishing and energetic boundaries and warding off negativity. So one thing to be clear about, that this is a modern witchcraft creation. It's not a historically standardized ingredient. This black witch salt is definitely more modern than it is historical. So in ritual use, it's often placed near doors, windows, or energetic thresholds with the intention of protecting that area, protecting the thresholds, protecting the entryways, and setting boundaries. So you can kind of think of it as like a symbolic, energetic security system. But like I said, I put some in my protection spell jars. I have a protection spell jar sitting on my altar, and then I also have one sitting in my living room that both have the same ingredients in it. That would be a cool thing to add to our cauldron corner, is how to make a little spell jar. Maybe we'll do that. So then there's also pink witch salt, which I also have and also added to my protection jars. Pink witch salt, it's another modern blend, and it's actually often associated with self-love, emotional protection, gentle boundaries, and heart healing. So my protection jar that I made, it kind of is like a protection of boundaries, a protection for our safety, and also like a protection for our emotions and, you know, our well-being all around. Its energetic tone when it comes to pink witch salt, where black witch salt is firm and protective, pink witch salt is more of a softer and restorative type of blend. A ritual idea for pink witch salt would be to use it in a self-love ritual or even boundary work that is prioritizing emotional safety. So then we have lavender. Lavender is one of the most calming herbs known in magical practice. I love the smell of fresh lavender. Well, I have some dried lavender in it. Oh, it smells so good. It's associated with peace, sleep, emotional healing, relaxation, and gentle attraction energy. Lavender has been used for promoting good sleep for as long as I've ever known. At least I've known that. I mean, even when I was a kid, I remember my mom had this lavender spray that you could spray on your pillow, and the spray would help you sleep. And I actually used to spray a little bit on my pillow at night, and it's just supposed to promote good sleep because it's a very calming scent. And it's used for emotional quieting, so it helps soften that internal noise. You could place it near your bed, you can add it to a bath, or you can use it in any kind of calming ritual that you're doing. Like I said, it is used to promote calmness and also good sleep. I use lavender in a lot of my spells because I've found some other properties that it's good for, if you're going to do a self-love spell, using lavender, adding some lavender would be beneficial because it does promote that calming. And I think we need that calmness when we're trying to bring out our self-love for sure. Moving on to eucalyptus. So eucalyptus is often associated with cleansing, clarity, energetic refresh, respiratory, and mental openness. Yes, respiratory for sure. Eucalyptus is one that's really good for opening up your sinuses when you're all clogged up for sure. I have dried eucalyptus hanging in my shower from the shower head. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, but yeah, I do have some. So for ritual use, it's often used in steam rituals or showers, which would be something that people would probably do to help clear their sinuses if they're using it for like respiratory purposes. But you can also use it in what's called a steam ritual and use it in a shower for an energetic reset. So it can be used physically, mentally, and spiritually, kind of all at the same time. So then we have peppermint. So peppermint I've used in my spells as well. It's associated with clarity, focus, energy, and mental stimulation. I think I forget what kind of spell it was. I want to say I did a spell that also called for mint. It might have been an abundance spell where it said mint is also good to use, and peppermint is what I had, so I used some peppermint leaves in that as well. Some other ritual uses for it. It's often used before work, study, or intention setting practices to sharpen your focus. Another common one you've probably heard of and used is cinnamon. It's a very powerful amplification herb. I use cinnamon definitely in all my abundance spells. It is often associated with speed, attraction, prosperity, and manifestation acceleration. So accelerating and speeding up what you're trying to manifest. I think I use cinnamon and a little pinch of cinnamon in nearly like all of my rituals and spells, depending on what they are. But yeah, it's definitely a very common one. It is often used in doorway spells or breath spells where intention is spoken and symbolically released. Some people do the first of the month cinnamon ritual where they will set their intentions, usually for like abundance, prosperity, good health, things like that. And they'll blow the cinnamon through the doorway, and that's supposed to attract and manifest those things. I have done that as well. I also used cinnamon in my little spell jar that I did for, it's an abundance spell jar or a money jar. I definitely used a little bit of cinnamon in that. And energetically, cinnamon is basically known to ignite energy. So it moves intentions forward. That's why it's so commonly used. So that's how you use some of those herbs in your practice in witchcraft. I want to do a little shift here because herbs and plants in witchcraft aren't just symbolic. They've also been used for centuries in traditional herbal practices for everyday care. So we're not talking about replacing medicine here, of course. This is about supportive, gentle, and traditional plant use for things like skin care, relaxation, digestion comfort, and emotional grounding. Again, always check with your doctors, especially if you've got certain health conditions or are on certain medications before using herbs in certain ways. You just have to be mindful. Think of it as the intersection between ritual and routine, magic and maintenance, spell work and self-care, because herbs are kind of universal like that, and they can be used for spell work and self-care. So let's talk about how some of those same herbs that we use spiritually can also show up in our everyday life for some other types of care. So one of the more common things, probably most common things you've heard of would be herbal teas. They're often used for different types of support and well-being. So loose leaf teas are definitely one of the oldest ways humans have worked with plants. I have drank some loose leaf teas in my life, and I really like them. I recently ran out of the one that I had. I have to go back to the shop and get some more loose leaf tea because it is really good. So when we talk about herbal teas, we're talking about infusions meant for general wellness support and comfort, not medical treatment. Always be mindful, like I said, of allergies too is a big one, medications, and any kind of sensitivities you may have to certain herbs. But we're going to break down a few herbs that we may have already discussed or have already discussed, and we're going to talk about them in the form of herbal tea. So there's lavender tea. Lavender tea is used to support calming, relaxation before sleep, and nervous system soothing traditions. Lavender tea is often used in bedtime routines to help create a sense of calm and emotional unwinding. Spiritually, it also aligns with peace and gentle release, so you can kind of see how they intertwine. Then you have peppermint tea. Peppermint tea is used for digestive comfort support, mental clarity, and refreshing energy. Peppermint tea has been traditionally used to support digestion after meals and to bring a cooling, alert feeling to the mind. And energetically, it clears fog and helps you reset. Now, peppermint tea is something I really don't like. I'm not a fan of it, and it also kind of messes with my acid reflux because I have pretty severe acid reflux. So when it comes to digestion support and tea, I don't typically do peppermint tea. I actually do ginger tea, and ginger tea really helps me digestively. So then there's rosemary tea. This is actually traditionally used for memory and focus support and a warming herbal infusion. Rosemary has a very long history in folk herbal traditions as a clarity herb. So it is strong in flavor, so it's often used in very small amounts, or it's blended with other herbs when making tea with rosemary. And then there's hibiscus tea. This is like a refreshing tart infusion. It's traditionally used in wellness traditions for circulation and hydration support. Hibiscus is rich and vibrant, and it's often enjoyed either iced or warm. And energetically, it connects to heart openness and emotional expression. So they really all do kind of tie in one way or another. So St. John's wort tea, there is an important note about this. This is where we do have to take a minute for everyone's safety. St. John's wort is traditionally used in herbal medicine systems for mood-related support, as I had mentioned before, stress relief, but it is known to interact with a lot of medications, including antidepressants, birth control, and others. So traditionally, it's used in herbal systems for emotional brightness and seasonal mood support, but it should only be used with professional guidance due to its very strong interactions with many medications, so do be mindful of that when using St. John's wort. And spiritually, it is still associated with light, warmth, and emotional uplift. So there is such a thing as mugwort tea. It's often used in spiritual tea traditions for dream work, but it should be used with caution. Like I mentioned before, it should be avoided during pregnancy and not used in high amounts. Traditionally, it is used more symbolically than made in daily tea. So then a cinnamon infusion, which just sounds warm and comforting to me, is actually used for circulation support in traditional herbalism. Cinnamon is often used in teas for warmth, grounding, and sensory activation. Like I said, a cinnamon infusion does just sound like warm and comforting to me. And energetically, it basically turns the volume up on intention and focus. So let's talk about some herbal skincare and ritual body care. We're going to move into this. This is something that's really beautiful about herbs. Herbal skincare and body rituals. It's where witchcraft becomes physical care for your actual body. Again, this is traditional gentle support, not medical treatment. I have to say that for your safety and mine, so just be mindful. So rose petal water can be infused. Rose petals can be infused in water to create a gentle floral rinse. So when I wash my face, I use what's called micellar water, and I often I have one that's rose water, like it's micellar water, but it's got rose water in it as well. So it's traditionally used for soothing rituals, cooling skincare practices, and emotional comfort through the scent of it. And spiritually, rose is heart energy in a physical form. A rosemary infused rinse is another option. Rosemary can be steeped in cold into a rinse that's used for scalp rituals, which was used in folk traditions, cleansing symbolic energy from the body. and a refreshing herbal wash practice. It's often associated with clearing the day off of you. So then there's lavender infused oil or lavender infused water. So lavender is widely used in calming body oils, bath rituals, or sleep routines. Remember I mentioned the lavender spray that my mom used to have when I was a kid. It's often one of the most gentle and widely tolerated aromatic herbs. It's very, very commonly used, and energetically, it can soften overstimulation. So then the eucalyptus steam ritual that we kind of talked about, it's often used in the shower steam, or you can do facial steam bowls, which is actually a traditional herbal practice. So this creates a sensory clearing effect, opens up your breathing, calms your tension, and refreshes your senses. Peppermint and cooling applications. So peppermint is often used in cooling balms. It's like a diluted oil form in herbal practice, and it's used in refreshing bath soaks. And then it's also used as sensory-wise as like a wake-up blend. And it creates a cooling sensation, and it kind of makes you more mentally alert. So then some more on herbal baths and ritual cleanses. One of the most accessible ways to blend skincare and ritual is through baths. I'm actually not a big bath person. I really don't take baths that often. For some reason, they I don't know, skeeve me out a little bit. I'm weird, but I should really start taking baths more often and doing adding herbs. I think that would be a good idea. But yeah, so skincare can be done through baths. You can add lavender for promoting the calmness. You can add rosemary for the cleansing. You can add rose petals for the emotional healing, or you could add peppermint for that refreshment and that mental awakeness. So it kind of becomes a full body reset ritual. And spiritually, baths do represent release, and water is supposedly meant to carry away your intentions. So you can even set intentions during your bath or before your bath. So before we continue, I know I mentioned this several times, but it's very important to mention herbs can support some, wellness traditions, but they're not replacements for any kind of medical care. So always check for allergies, be cautious with your sensitivities, your medication interaction, pregnancy, etc. Witchcraft and herbalism can absolutely coexist with modern healthcare. You just have to be cautious and be mindful, which we're always trying to be mindful. So what I love about herbal work is that it dissolves the line between the spiritual and the physical. It really kind of combines them together, and how it all just correlates with each other. You're not just casting a spell, you're also caring for your nervous system and your body. You're not just working with intentions, but you're tending to your body as well. And maybe all in all, that's kind of the real magic here. And with talking about all of the herbs and different ritual tools that we do, it kind of becomes pretty clear that witchcraft is not about complexity. I say that all the time. It does not have to be complex. Witchcraft can be simple. It's really about the relationship that you have with it and with the tools. These plants, they're not just ingredients to us. They are symbolic allies. Each one carries a different tone, a different rhythm, a different way of interacting with intention. And your practice does not need to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be elaborate. I do say this all the time. I mentioned to you I'm on TikTok now, and one of the things I say often in any of my content and my videos when I'm showing people how to set up for some of these rituals is that it can be simple. It does not have to be elaborate, fancy, and complex. So when you're starting to work with herbs or anything in witchcraft, just start simple. Start with one herb, one intention at a time, one moment of awareness, and just kind of let it grow from there. It will grow. You will learn more as you go. And also remember that magic is not always loud. And oftentimes it's not. Sometimes it's as simple as putting some rosemary in some steam or some lavender near your bed, or having a little bit of cinnamon with you, as you know what I mean. It's often very quiet and simple, and that's okay. Okay, guys, that's a little insight that I just gave you on some different herbs, how you can use them, in all kinds of different ways. Hope you got something out of this information. Thank you so much for walking this journey with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love to hear from you. Leave your feedback, share your experiences, ask me any questions, tell me what else you want to hear on the podcast. I'm all ears. And don't forget to leave a rating too, because it helps others discover our magical circle. And make sure that you share the episode, follow me, subscribe so you never miss a cauldron conversation. I'm on Facebook under Crystals, Cauldrons, and Conversations. I have a Facebook group called the Triple C Coven, and I'm on TikTok now, which it's called Witch Talk with Kaylee. So you get all kinds of different witchcraft information. And for all the latest episodes, for all the latest updates, definitely keep up with the Facebook page, Crystals, Cauldrons, and Conversations. The Triple C Coven, I have even more magic on the Triple C Coven group. I have videos and things on there, which are also on my TikTok. So you can also check out the show notes for the steps and the ingredients for the spell that we talked about during our Cauldron Corner. That will be in there. And then come sit around the cauldron with me next week when we dive into self-care. So next week is an important topic. Self-care is something we all need, all deserve. I'll be waiting to welcome you into the coven. And as always, stay magical.